All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining this evening. I'm really looking forward to spending some time with y'all and getting to hear from some really amazing advocates on how a clean slate can change lives. I'm going to start out with just kind of a real top-level overview of what Clean Slate is and why we believe that it's important for Missouri. Please save your questions till the end. We'll have Q&A time for all the panelists. If you have kind of specific Clean Slate legislation questions, you can ask those at the end, but we might follow up on that outside of today's meeting so we can really focus on the panelists. So we have 4 speakers in addition to myself. And that's Patty Berger, who's the president of the St. Louis chapter of All of Us or None, and deputy public administrator with the city of St. Louis. Basia, Skudrzyk, who's the workforce equity director with Prison to Professionals and the founder and CEO of Worldwide Smart Beauty. Johnny Waller Jr., who is with Clear My Record Expungement Project. He's the manager of the Clear My Record Expungement Project at UMKC School of Law, also CEO of the JLW Group and founder and executive director of S.C.O.P.E. And last but certainly not least, we have Fran Marion, who is a member and organizer with Missouri Worker Center Stand Up KC. All right, so just to kind of start with some framing, in Missouri, we have the 7th highest incarceration rate in the country. So we know that this is a big issue for our state. We are gung-ho about mass incarceration, and as a result, almost 2 million Missourians have criminal records. We spend more than $725 million annually on correction costs. So really significant impact on our state. And Clean Slate is kind of coming into the picture because our current expungement process is not working well for us. So our current expungement process is costly, it's time consuming and confusing. A lot of the attorneys we talk to that are very familiar with the current process say that it is clear as mud. It's an extremely confusing process that is really not designed to be accessible. Over 500,000 Missourians currently have convictions that are eligible for expungement under current expungement law. But only about 1% of those individuals have actually been able to access expungement. The average expungement cost $500. So that's one of the reasons that not many people have been able to actually access record sealing. I like to put it this way: if a program had a 1% success rate, you would say that there's something wrong with that program. It's not really working very well. And I think that that's where we're at with our current expungement process in Missouri. So we know that there's a lot of consequences of a criminal record, and you'll hear about some of those impacts from our panelists this evening. Those include limited housing options, a lifelong reduction in earning potential, undermining family stability and family relationships, having difficulty accessing education, and limited employment opportunities. Applicants with a record, we know, are only half as likely as other job seekers to get a call back from a potential employer. And there's nearly 50,000 state and regulatory restrictions that limit people with records from accessing all these different aspects of our society. These restrictions are everything from restrictions on employment, restrictions on being able to serve on a jury, not being able to be a chaperone on your kid's field trip. This shows up in really insidious ways and impacts a lot of different aspects of people's lives. We know that background checks are used by 2/3 of colleges, over 8 in 10 employers, and 8 in 10 landlords. So it is very difficult to get anywhere with a record because everywhere you go, these background checks are being used. And we also know that there's a big family impact here. Nearly 50% of US children have at least one parent with a criminal record. So Clean Slate comes in here To address this impact, we have seen clean slate legislation passed in 8 other states, including some pretty conservative states. So we're very hopeful that we can pass it in Missouri. 1 year after a record's been cleared, people are 11% more likely to be employed. So we see those results that an expungement really does change lives. On average, the wages of people that receive expungements increase by more than 20% just 1 year after a record's been cleared. In 5 years after expungement, individuals that received an expungement were less likely than members of the general public to be convicted of a crime. So clean slate is the term, kind of a blanket term that we use to talk about automatic expungement. Clean slate looks a little bit different for each state, depending on the specifics of the state. In Missouri, when we say expungement, we're talking about record sealing. So that means that the record still exists and is still accessible by law enforcement, but does not show up in other background checks or other records requests. Automatic expungement means, that the state is responsible for processing the expungements, notifying individuals that their record has been sealed, and updating those records on a monthly basis. So it really takes the process off of the individual because we know that the individual kind of having to navigate that entire process is what makes it so inaccessible and puts the process back on the state. Anyone that is eligible for expungement currently under Missouri law, so they have an offense that's qualifies for expungement and they've had that waiting period, anybody that meets those 2 criteria would be eligible for automatic expungement. And there's just some information here about the reporting requirements. Basically, this is holding the state accountable to the legislation if we're able to pass this legislation, ensuring that there's a system of accountability and checks and balances to ensure that automatic expungement is being carried out equitably. Fees would not need to be paid in advance of expungement. They would still need to be paid, but not as a prerequisite. This was a big thing that we were hearing when we were kind of doing various listening sessions with UMKC around what people wanted to see in this policy, that court fines and fees are extremely prohibitive, right? That's one of the reasons that people were struggling to access expungement resources because they were not able to get all of those fees and fines paid ahead of time. So currently the policy language is that that they would not need to be paid as a prerequisite. Also, just as a disclaimer, right, this is kind of what we've put forward for clean slate legislation. This is what has been entered in the first drafts of the bills in both the House and the Senate. So there could potentially be some changes to some of these details as we go through the session. Lifetime limits are another big area that we've heard a lot from folks that, for clean slate, for expungement to really have the intended impact, we need to raise those lifetime limits. Right now, the limit for record sealing in Missouri is 1 felony and 2 misdemeanors per individual. We're seeking to increase that cap to 3 felonies and 5 misdemeanors, knowing that would just kind of be our foot in the door and hopefully being able to raise it more in the future. And if this legislation is passed, the state would have 2 years to put the proposed changes into effect. So that is what we're talking about when we talk about clean slate and the impact that it could have on people's lives is what we will be hearing about from our panelists. So I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to our first panelist, Basia, and she will kick it off. We'll hear a little bit from each of our 4 panelists. They'll kind of share one at a time about their story and their perspective on this, and then we will leave the final half hour of our town hall for questions. So if you have any questions and you don't want to forget it, feel free to go ahead and put it in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the town hall. So thanks all for joining, and I'm going to stop my screen share and turn it over to Basia.
Well, good evening. Thank you, Gwen, for the opportunity to be a part of your town hall today. and to empower Missouri for promoting the importance of clean slate. I'm grateful to be a part of your committee and mission to help justice-involved people have a voice and move forward. A little brief history of who I am. I am a daughter of 2 immigrant parents from Poland. I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and kind of lived both in the world of an immigrant family and contemporary society, which is quite a balancing act. This balancing act kind of reminds me of what it feels like to be incarcerated and formally incarcerated. There's a lot of socioeconomic factors, residue from political involvements. In my case, coming from a Polish immigrant family, approaches to church governance, a lot of mistrust among different generations of Polish immigrants and differing approaches to enculturation. So I grew up in the midst of a lot of turmoil, which can in some ways be compared to what is going on with Ukraine and Russia right now, and what is going on with people who are incarcerated and who are wanting to move forward and to find opportunities for a second chance. Despite these challenges, though, I'm doing the best I can personally to stay positive, to be aligned with organizations like Empower Missouri, and to create a unified voice so that we can share the stories we've endured by being incarcerated. I was sentenced in 2018. I self-surrendered to a federal camp in Greenville and served 1 year, a week, and a day, completing my 30-month sentence under the CARES Act due to COVID and having a nonviolent case. I am a single mother of 2 beautiful young children that I needed to leave. Luckily, my parents stepped in big time and were able to be there for them while I was away. But in my case, I had a roof, I had food, I had programs that were offered to me, but nothing in terms of that type of support that could have been offered to my family. In many ways, I'm an anomaly. I had tremendous support from my family and my friends who encouraged me to keep moving forward, to stay positive, to make the best of my time while I was away. During my time away, I focused on helping others in the education center. I helped run GED courses. We developed more adult education type programs to give women education and the understanding that education truly can make imperative change. A lot of women that I was incarcerated with, that there was a pattern, I think it was 85% have been traumatized, whether due to personal experience, professional experience, women who didn't feel they had a voice or a choice, and made very difficult and bad decisions in their life, which led to their incarceration. My family and culture is the most important to me. And I think as a community, the significance of family and community are interchangeable. I think the best way to describe me is an entrepreneur. I tend to think outside of the box. I'm a visionary. I love to create. I love people, program management, and connecting people together and to find similarities amongst people that may have a difference of opinion. So that's how I kind of landed into the reentry space after I completed my sentence. And now I am pursuing my doctorate in business administration and supply chain at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. My passion has been in the workforce development field. Many people are returning home, but they do not have opportunities for meaningful and sustainable job opportunities. And I kind of want to underline the sustainable and meaningful job opportunities. Many people are told what field they should be in after being formally incarcerated versus truly focusing on what that person aspires to be and wants to be. And my role at P2P, Prison to Professional, is to open those doors and to provide those opportunities to people. Recently, we developed a STEM track. We're working with the Education Development Center We had a remarkable convening in St. Louis with over 150 people, which composed of the Department of Justice, different universities, employers, basically learning from one another and listening to the stories that people experience when coming back to their homes and to their communities. And one of the major barriers, as I said, is employment. How do you take care of your children? How do you pay for your bills when doors are closed and shut because of a conviction? So the Clean Slate Act would be tremendous to many people so that they're not further stigmatized based on choices they made in their past, but rather chosen based on the skill sets they have and the opportunities for innovation and perspective that people have coming from places that we have. I've had the opportunity to work with Imperial College in London, with NASA, Jobs for the Future. These are all forward-thinking organizations that see that potential that is untapped with people who've been formerly incarcerated. Recently, I've been also working with Worldwide Technology because there are so many opportunities in the STEM field, especially in the coding field, where we're also working with Launch Code, where people actually can start preparing for their job while they're incarcerated so they have a smooth transition coming back home. So again, in terms of my own personal involvement, there was an underlying current that unfortunately caused a detour in all the wonderful opportunities I was able to be a part of prior to my incarceration. I did not ask for help, and I felt I could bury my own personal issues by staying busy, saying yes, and doing whatever I could for my family and friends. But then that chain broke, and it resulted in me serving 12 months of a 30-month prison sentence for 3 counts of mail fraud. I felt completely broken, destroyed. I didn't even know how to behave. I knew I had no choice but to find a way. And so I started to research successful professionals who came out stronger due to their incarceration. And one person who has been that mentor to me is Dr. Stanley Andrees, who is the executive director of P2P, Prison to Professional. I was connected to him prior to my incarceration, and we stayed in contact since then, building a pipeline for formerly incarcerated people to find a way to get into education and then transfer into workforce development opportunities. I graduated as a scholar from that program and then was provided a coordinator position and then transferred into the interim program director. And now I'm the workforce equity director, leading our very first T34 grant, which allows 4 graduating scholars from the P2P program to go to Baltimore City Community College and Howard University for free for a 4-year education pathway in STEM. So again, education, having those doors open to people who have been told continuously that they're not worthy or capable of being in the spaces has been truly life-changing. Some of the most strongest people I have ever met in my life. And by creating these spaces and these systems, people are able to do more together and to make effective change. And we actually can demonstrate that by providing adequate support system and programs to people who have detours in their life, they can change and they can make profound opportunities in their community. Dr. Stanley Andrees was incarcerated for 9 years, and he was told that he would live in prison forever. And he now is an epidemiologist at Howard University and Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. So if people are given the opportunity and if people are treated with respect and dignity, they can really go further than what society tends to place them in these spaces of barriers. And based on my own specific barriers, when you do come home there's more than you realize. In my situation, being on supervision still, I'm not able to travel abroad. The majority of my family lives abroad, so it's difficult. I haven't seen them since 2018. My children play sports. We live right next to Illinois, right across the river, and I always have to ask for permission. And sometimes I'm not allowed based on the number of trips I can take in a year. Other things that include are I can't use a credit card. I can't have my own savings or own a car. A lot of people that I've worked with have not been able to rent because liens follow you on a federal case. So those are just some little highlights of what people don't realize people have to deal with on a daily basis, on top of having to take care of your children and trying to find ways for them to grow and have opportunities for the future. So I really wish people would understand the daily struggles and the stigma that is placed upon a person. And most importantly, their family. It's not just me. It's most importantly my family who has endured more pain than I have. Fortunately, people see the number of incarcerated people. They see that number growing, but they don't understand why. And I know it didn't come to my mind prior to my incarceration. It was basically out of mind and out of sight, people who don't experience these types of traumas and events have no idea, and not on purpose. It's just, if it's not a part of your life, you tend to not really think about these really serious issues. And there's also a lot of fear centered around people who have been justice involved. And it's not due to danger. It's due to systems that have been in place that are not allowing people to restore themselves. So in my opinion, I feel that this is harming our community as people are becoming homeless and advancing in chronic illness due to not having support where it's needed in times of transition. So I guess my last words would be, it takes every person to solve this epidemic. The numbers that Gwen just shared are very jarring, and they're very sad that we are one of the leading states in incarceration. And my goal would be to be on the bottom of that list. So thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of who I am and my story. And I look forward to learning more about everyone else that's on this call.
Basia, thank you so much for being on this call with us, for all of your advocacy, just in general, and for sharing your story. That was really wonderful to hear. And next we're going to hear from Johnny Waller Jr.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. And congratulations on all your hard work and degrees. That's awesome. So you should be very, very proud of yourself. And so, again, my name is Johnny Waller Jr., formerly inmate number 51451 in the Department of Corrections. I'm going to try to go through the particular talking points that was provided, and thank you to Empower and for allowing me to be here. And so I was convicted, when I was 18 years old, I was convicted of possession and possession with intent to deliver. I was sentenced to 2.5 to 5 years, an additional 18 months in the Nebraska State Penitentiary. That was my first drug offense, and yeah, they sent me to prison for it. So a little bit how that happened. So I grew up in a household. My mom had 3 jobs. My dad smoked crack. Everybody was poor. And so our lights would get cut off. We wouldn't have any food. So I went to my dad one day. My mom, she ended up leaving, like she couldn't take it anymore. And she just left. And then at some point, when I was about 14 years old, my dad just kicked me out the house. I was homeless for a while, went to go stay with some of my cousins. They were Santana Block Crips. And so ended up joining a gang and doing some other stuff. And when I was 16 years old, I ended up getting shot in the head at point blank range. I was 17. I was involved in the shooting where I was a perpetrator. I went to jail for that. Then I got out and I was still selling drugs, because that's pretty much my father's contribution was, you want to make some money, go sell some drugs. That was his contribution. So that's what I did. And we were on the highway going to sell some drugs to somebody. I didn't drive. I had like a driver. Sounds really weird, but I never drove anywhere. I just had a driver. And I fell asleep. And I woke up to this. I'm like, what's going on? And we were getting pulled over. We got pulled over by the highway patrol. And it was a canine unit of all things. And while I was asleep, he had missed the exit. And so he turned around, like literally through the grass. Like he didn't wait till, the next exit, turn around like a normal person. He simply cut through the grass, and police were sitting there, and they wrote him a ticket, and they asked me who I was. They ran my name, seen I had warrants for my arrest, so they were going to take me to jail. They wrote the ticket and came back and asked him to search the vehicle. He gave his consent for whatever reason that was. And they found the car full of drugs. And so they ended up going to jail for that and the rest of the warrants. And so I went to court, and it was a really strange process. They had me in a federal holding tank instead of the regular holding tank, and I couldn't understand what was going on. The police officers came in and asked me to wear a wire, and I refused. A week to give me a bail, and still I don't understand what's going on. So eventually, some of my partners bailed me out, and going through this trial period, this pre-trial period. And so I'm like, it ain't my car. I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna fight this. And so what ended up happening, long story short, is my lawyer was like, hey, look over there at the prosecutors. And I said, what am I looking at? And he opened the blinds, and there was my friend. It was like, he's been secretly meeting with the prosecuting attorney for the last 6 months. He's prepared to come in here and testify against you. We might want to plead guilty because there's no way we can win. And so I ended up pleading guilty, and they sentenced me to go to prison. And when I did my time, then I went, to go see the parole board after I'd served a couple of years, and they said, well, we'll give you parole, but you have to leave the state or stay in prison. And so that's how I ended up in Kansas City. It's kind of easy choice: stay in prison, parole out of state. And so I got here, and in prison they told me I could, you'll get a job and you can go to school and you can do this when you get out, and we got all this stuff. And I found out that was not true. So I applied for 175 jobs, didn't get one of them. Like not one. Nobody wanted to hire me. I tried to go to school. They was like, no, sir, you can't go to school. I was like, oh wow. So no job, no school, no nothing. I'm living with my mother. She's like, why don't you just go get a job? We in the house arguing all the time because she, go get food stamps. I can't. Well, go get a job. I can't. Well, what can you do? Like, I don't know, sell drugs. There's really nothing left for me to do. So I one day I got upset, went and got a gun, and I told my mother, just send me back to prison. Like, I know what's going on in prison. This being out here free, this ain't for me. Like, it's too hard. Like, send me back to prison. And she had to go beg somebody at a gas station to give me a job paying like $8.35. And so I ended up taking that job. Now I'm on parole, and you know, there was no reentry services. Eventually I quit hearing from my parole officer. He wouldn't return my calls. He wouldn't come see me. It got to the point where I was nervous because I'm thinking that he done thought I done absconded or escaped or something, and I got a new charge. I'm going up to the parole office in Belton, and right outside of Kansas City, like trying to see this person and call him, and he wouldn't take my calls, wouldn't call me back, wouldn't see me. I never even knew when I got off parole. Never. They didn't send no papers. They didn't say, hey, anything. I just simply quit hearing from them. And so as the years went on, I just figured, either they gonna arrest me or they gonna tell me that I'm free and clear. And so having this felony conviction was really detrimental for not just me, for my family. And I found freedom through entrepreneurialism. I went and I started a business. I started a cleaning company. I owned a cleaning company for 7 years. 6th year though, my firstborn son was diagnosed with stage 4 high-risk neuroblastoma, so he had cancer. And so I put him in a car and I moved to Memphis, Tennessee to go to St. Jude Hospital. I lived in the hospital for 2 years, just me and my son. And here's a real sad thing about it. I couldn't work. You can't work like and take care of your kid. He has cancer. So and technically when you live in a hospital at St. Jude, you're not a resident of Tennessee. You're a resident of whatever state that you came from. And so if you need benefits or assistance or whatever, you have to apply at the state where you live. And so they were like, well, can't you get on assistance? And I'm like, no, I have a felony conviction. Like I don't qualify for any assistance. And they're like, but you lost your business, you quit you're down here taking care of your son, he has cancer. And I'm like, I know, but no one cares about that. They're like, you got possession with a charge, you don't qualify, you're a convicted drug dealer. And that's it. And so got through that period. Unfortunately, my son got sick and he passed away 5 days before his 4th birthday. So, it was a complete tragedy that had happened. And it was just sad that during that time I couldn't receive any assistance from anybody than I did when I was 8 years old. Like, it was pretty ridiculous. And so what I would really say is the perpetual punishment of people is wrong. The United States simply warehouses people and gives them a felony conviction. And they use the words like rehabilitation, but rehabilitation means to restore to your former state. It absolutely makes no sense. We have an incarceration problem. America is a very punitive punishment place. And for a country that was founded on people who are escaping persecution from the British, that was supposed to be built on second chances, this is absolutely not the place. So, the way that we treat people have a felony conviction is horrible. You're treated like you're the scum of the earth, like you're the worst of the worst person. I've even been threatened by people I know, like when I don't do something that they like, they'll say, all I got to do is call the police and tell them you're a former gang member and you went to prison. I'll be like, really? Like, is that how we do things now? Like, and so, I mean, having that stigma attached is terrible. It affects your whole life. It affects your family. And the current petition-based system under 610-140, me and my good coworker Sydney, who's on here, hey Sydney, Yesterday we were going over the steps for like the self-help petition, so the pro se, and we realized how really complicated it was. Sydney did a really good job of putting something together, and we should be releasing that soon. But it's so complicated, we wanted to put a video out to help people explain exactly how you go through the process, because it's a very costly and time-consuming process. And if you don't get certain aspects of it correct, then you'll simply get denied, right? And so the burden being on the pro se person or the petitioner is absolutely insanity. So clean slate legislation gets rid of the burden on the state. I mean, the state had enough money and gumption to prosecute us and send us to prison. They can go ahead and foot the bill, and it's time for people to become expunged. And people present this false narrative about public safety. The thing about it is, if someone goes to prison and they're released, and they're supposed to get this second chance and be able to successfully reintegrate back into the community, you close all the doors for them. There's really not much else for them to do but go ahead and go back to what they used to do. Like the premise, none of it absolutely doesn't make sense. Like it's a prisoner's paradox, literally. And you say, hey, we want you to go out and be successful and get a job and do this. And you're like, well, yeah, but I can't. I mean, but that's what we want you to do. But yeah, it's not possible. So the way that we've structured things is literally designed to send people back to prison. And if anybody can explain a way to me that it's not that way, I would gladly listen. But the system is designed to send people back to prison. And the Trump administration, they did a special report on recidivism in America, and this report is generally not talked about. And it talks about the harm and the devastation that convictions have on the United States. So everybody knows this. It's really not a secret. So it's incumbent upon all of us to fight for this social justice so people can really have a chance to move forward. And that clean slate legislation is a part of that. Thank you for listening.
Johnny, thank you so much for sharing your story and touching on some really extremely important points. I am happy to turn it over to Patty Berger, who is one of, along with Johnny, another member of our Clean Slate campaign leadership team. So both Patty and, sorry guys, I'm like trying to figure out on Zoom this like pinned view thing. I've never done this before, so hopefully it's showing up correctly for other people. But both Patty and Johnny have been very involved in the Clean Slate campaign and trying to make automated expungement a reality in Missouri. So I'm excited to turn it over to Patty. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. My name is Patty Berger. Some people know me that are on this meeting, but for the ones that don't, I'm an activist here in St. Louis. I'm the president of St. Louis chapter of All of Us or None. I started going to prison in 1983, and it didn't end until 2001. I was one of those people that went in and out of prison, and people talked about you in prison. When you came back, they'd say, can you believe she's back again? And they talked about you out here because you went back. Nobody can understand, why would you want to go back to prison? Well, I attribute a lot of it to childhood trauma that I was medicating myself about. I was on drugs from age 13 until 42. Most of my life was spent on drugs, and that was my way of dealing with all the trauma. I went to prison 11 times here in Missouri. I didn't even think I could change. I thought, it was a done deal. I was probably going to die in prison, but it was through programming and working with other formerly incarcerated people who gave me hope. And they were part of women's groups and NA groups and AA groups and people I surrounded myself with. It was a whole network of people that it was different after the last time I got out in 2001. I, tried to take suggestions and listen to what others had to say and to put them in action in my own life. But it was through having people that I could count on to be there for me. And one of them is on this call right now. Her name's Berger. I just want to say that. She worked for an organization called the Center for Women in Transition. They offered me safe housing. I had no credit. I had no job. I had nothing but me coming out one more time. And I, I did what what was suggested. I followed people's lead instead of me being the know-it-all all the time. I had to, surrender to the program and to the process, and it made all the difference for me. I found that reentry for me every other time was me getting out, going back to the same places that I lived in before I went to prison, and feeling all the guilt and shame about my 2 children that I couldn't provide for them, and then returning to using drugs, which eventually led to me stealing. All my convictions are for stealing from stores and then selling merchandise later. Eventually, though, you get what they call mandatory minimums put on you, which means if you've been convicted more than 3 times, you're going to do a whole lot of whatever they give you. And they're going to add some extra to it too. And I was fortunate enough that I didn't have to do that. I got out of the game right as it was being implemented. And for me and my family, it's been a long road. I've been out 22 years. And initially my kids were, they grew up with me in prison. They lived with their paternal grandparents. Their father had been murdered, going to buy drugs one night. So, here their mother was a drug addict, their father was dead, and their paternal grandparents were raising them. I'd come out for a few months and promise the world, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And they're looking at me with their little eyes and thinking I'm going to do it. And I really wanted to do it, but I didn't have any resources to make it happen. So when I did get out in 2001, my daughter was 18, my son was 21, they were grown people. They had basically quit even listening to anything I had to say. And that's part of my story. I talk to other people who have children, and we can't get clean and stay focused if we're doing it because of other people. We have to do it for ourselves, and they have to be able to stand back and see us in that process to believe that this is even possible. And it took my kids a few years. I knew they were waiting for the other shoe to drop. But if your kids are younger and you have a chance to really build that bond with them, it goes a lot smoother for your family. But when you don't have anything, it's really hard to build your life back, and all the barriers that having a criminal record puts on a person are insurmountable. They really are. What was different for me and what made the difference was me working those crapo jobs, because nobody's going to give you a job when you've been to prison 11 times. One of my friends was working at a Motel 6, and she was in prison with me, but she lied and got the job, and she was like the manager there. So she said, just lie on the application. So I did, and they hired me. And I cleaned rooms where people partied all weekend long. They were tore up, they were nasty. But I went to work in the snow, in the rain, on the bus, and I became humble. And I wasn't humble for most of my life. I thought I was knew everything, but I didn't. And that led to me being able to ask for help when I really needed that help on many levels. When I was the the Center for Women in Transition put me in a place called an Oxford House. Some of you may be familiar with it. They provided a clean and sober environment for me to live. And one of the ladies in there was going up to the community college. I had never been to college. I graduated in 76, didn't know how to use a computer or anything. Went up there just on, why not? And it led to me, it took me 14 years to get a bachelor's degree, a little bit here, a little bit there, working odd jobs in between. And my name and the new way of me living, people were starting to notice. And so they were giving me opportunities that I might not have other had if I was still living back in the same house with my mother-in-law in the same neighborhood, dealing with the same people. So it was a change of environment, change of people. And my kids, like I said, it's been a long process because they were hurt in all of this too. And they had to come to their own. We still struggle a little bit. We don't have all the history that most parents have with their kids when their kids are younger. I wasn't there for the first day of school. I was in prison for either of my kids. I didn't take them places that most kids get to go with their parents. And so, the memories are very limited. Prison visits, when I was out, the things that I was doing, I was giving them stuff I was stealing, I thought that was being a great mother. It wasn't. But I have to say that through it all, we have made it together, me and my adult children. And my son has 5 children. They're my grandkids. I got a second chance with them. I, basically try to lead them and give them information that'll help them with their journey in life. I don't hide anything. I think that being honest about myself allows them and the people that I work with and connect with, honesty is how we grow. And I've grown tremendously in this process. But I think that working with Clean Slate here in Missouri and getting this initiative where we can start, it's not perfect. I wouldn't even fit the criteria. I've got 18 felony convictions. But in the drafted bill, there is a clause, I think it's age 65, that you're automatically eligible, to have everything clean. So that would hopefully, if they don't take it out, it could possibly work for me in about a year or so. But I'm just saying that I got involved in advocacy because my voice, nobody can speak better for me than me. And I believe that, it was in my bio, nothing about us without us. And I mean that. If we can't sit at the table with everybody else who's making decisions about our lives, then they're never going to get the perspective that they need to make changes. I see you, Pastor Jackson. I don't know what he's saying, but he's one of our members of All of Us or None. And I love him. I'm just saying it out here. But we work real hard with All of Us or None. We talk to legislators. We get involved in policy and things. We've been traveling a lot this year, going to different conferences where formerly incarcerated people come together across the country and networking with one another. It's very uplifting. When I first got out, 6 months out, I went to New York for the Women's Network, the Women's Prisoners Network. It came out of California. They offered scholarships, and I met women from all over the country who were just like me. They had been to prison, probably maybe did 20 years, or they had ran in and out for years like me. And I thought, if they can do it, I can do it. And those opportunities that I got involved in early on kind of molded me. And All of Us or None was a perfect fit because the mainstay of All of Us or None is that we speak in our own voices and we make the difference to change the way the system is. Yeah, it's hard and it's a long process, but it keeps me busy and it keeps me out of the penitentiary. So I'm very grateful for that. Having a clean slate is like a miracle. it offers people opportunities that you know, when you get a criminal record, you kind of learn how to duck and dash from it. And, you know, I tell the truth to everybody, but it still has a barrier. When I interviewed for my job as deputy public administrator in the city of St. Louis, it was right when I graduated from college. And the man that interviewed me, the public administrator, he was interviewing me. I could tell he was going to hire me. It was a done deal. We were flowing in the interview. And then I said, I have to tell you something. And he said, oh, what is it? And I said, I have 18 felony convictions and I've been to prison a few times. And his face turned beet red. He said, oh my God, I don't think I can hire you. And I said, well, I had to be honest about it because it was going to come up. I'm in the community. I'm talking to people all the time. You know, I'm not hiding this. And so about 3 weeks went by and I sent him an email and I said, you know, I know you're probably not hiring me, but I wanted to know how the interview go. Do you think I could do better? What do you know, just asking for some pointers. And he answered me within like 2 minutes and said, I'll be in touch by the end of the week. And he hired me. So sometimes honesty and doing what you got to do is what works. But I also find that networking with other formerly incarcerated people is my best bet. It leads me in the right places. It gives me hope. And we have even found a way to make sure when we're offering our time that we're getting paid for it. We really feel that's important. We don't do things because we want to get paid. We do them because it's the right thing to do. But everybody who works around us, all these organizations and nonprofits, they're all getting paid. They're on the salary. You know, they're getting paid for what they do. Why shouldn't we be getting paid for what we're doing? And that's me. I spout it everywhere. But early on, when I got involved, I wasn't getting paid. And I was giving my time and I was giving my time and I was giving my time. And people will suck you dry. They just think, oh, she's this is a wonderful story. Let's have her over here to tell it. And, you know, great and wonderful. But after a while, I still got to feed my family. I still got to get to work. I still got to pay car insurance. And so I started speaking up because Get Involved with All of Us or None, the national organization, they told me it was okay to speak up and ask for what I thought was fair. So, you know, I just hope that it may not pass this year here in Missouri, but I think we got a good chance of it passing probably next year. But we got to educate. We got to tell people about this, why they should be involved, why the community, faith healers, leaders, everybody needs to have the information. And that's what I continue to do. And All of Us or None does is we educate our community and we talk to the people that make the laws. And I guess that's about it, Gwen. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patty. It was great. I think this was the first time that I've actually heard your story. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, I'm just very honored to get to work alongside you and have learned so much from Patty and from all the others on this call. So thank you for sharing. And we're going to turn it over to Fran Marion with Missouri Worker Center. And I'll take myself off mute. All right, take it away, Fran. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Fran Marion. Wow, I've listened to all you guys' stories, and all you guys' stories is like, no matter where we are, all our lives have kind of went down similar paths. I got my conviction in 2019. A little bit about myself and my background. Growing up, I never knew what it was like to struggle. I was the only girl and I have two brothers. So if we struggled, I didn't know about it. I never knew what the definition of struggle was until my mom passed away in 2007 and I was left on my own with 2 kids. My mom was my rock. I will tell you that I grew up, I'm very book smart, but street smarts, I thought I had it, but I really didn't have it. So I got into a toxic relationship because I, wanted to fill that void of my mom being gone, being lost in the world. So I got into a very toxic relationship that led me to move to Poplar Bluff, Missouri, which is they call it the boot here in Missouri. And while living in the boot here, I got into some things. I was making $850, taking care of a house of 9 people, paying rent, trying to pay gas, pay lights, and I couldn't do it off $850 and working at McDonald's. And so it came to the point to where our lights got cut off. And we were doing it to where we were using a cord from the neighbor's house into our house, but that's making their light bill go up. So it wasn't a good thing. And so it wound up to where my significant other was street savvy. Like I said, I was not. I'm a book smart person. And so they came up with an idea that one of our associates would get blank checks from their job. And what they did was they got the blank check, wrote it out. It was for $700. And they put my name on it. And I went, being naive, I went to try to cash it. And due to the fact that Poplar Bluff is a town where everybody know everybody, they knew the owner of the checks. And he came up, he said he didn't know me, I didn't know him. Police were there and I was instantly arrested. Off of that first offense, they gave me 6 years in prison. I got out in 2014. I got out in Kansas City. I'm originally from Omaha, Nebraska. My parents, my stepdad, shall I say, shut the door in my face. I wasn't welcome back home. So they said, my parole officer in prison said I had between Kansas City and St. Louis. My kids were in Omaha, Nebraska. So I was like, whichever one's closer to my kids, that's where I want to go. So I came to Kansas City in 2014, lived in a halfway house. When I got there, they gave me a list of jobs. The only jobs that they gave me a list of were fast food jobs and warehouse jobs. That was the only thing they said with me being a felon, that I was destined to work. So I got a job, got on my feet, so forth and so on. I'm trying to think. I kind of get emotional talking about it because it's just like I'm still living it every day, and I say that because right now I'm trying to find a place to stay because I've outgrown my apartment and they're not doing the upkeep to the apartment that needs to be done to make it safe. And everywhere that I went and all the houses that I tried to apply for, you have to have no felonies, not within a time frame. They're making you have to have none. Not even though I have all the other qualifications, I have to have no felonies. So therefore, I'm kind of stuck where I am right now. And as far as a clean slate, what that would mean for me, I'm gonna tell you like this. Like I heard so many other people say. I feel like they tell us when you get out, they'll tell you that, oh, you'll be back. Or they'll tell you on the other hand that you'll have, if you do a certain amount of time, you have incarcerated mind. I have an incarcerated mindset due to the fact that society has me have incarcerated mindset, because society makes me feel with that X on my back, I will never prosper. So if your mind's not strong enough, of course you're going to go back. Of course you're going to want to go back because the system and society is set up to send you back. It's basically a sink or swim world. We're not getting that second chance. We're not getting in society. And it comes down to the fact that people don't realize that not only are we doing this sentence, like all you guys have said, our families are doing this sentence. Clean slate is important to me so that my kids can quit doing a life sentence because of their mother's mistakes. I've been out. I haven't gotten in no trouble. I've been involved in the Missouri Workers Center and Stand Up KC since 2015. I am a functioning member of society. I get arrested. I volunteer to get arrested. literally fighting for what I believe in. I did it the wrong way and the uneducated way, but now I'm doing it the right way, but I'm still being judged and tormented because of mistakes that I made. I think along with us and everyone else, we need a clean slate in society because we've learned our lesson. You say that we are part of society when we come out and we should be rehabilitated, but yet and still, you still have that stigma that we aren't, because that X on our back and that stays on our back. I live with my mistake and missing my kids grow up and missing those 6 years of their lives all my life. It's never going to go away. I will always live that life sentence, but that I should be able to live it for me, not because society is making me live it. And that's why I feel that the clean slate is very important and it should be passed, because it gives people a sense of wanting to live life and knowing that there is a strong chance, a possibility at being seen as a functional member of society. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Fran. It's really powerful. Fran also spoke at our recent Kansas City town hall, if anyone was there in person and got to hear her story there as well. So thank you, Fran, thank you, Johnny, thank you, Basia, and thank you, Patty. That was really powerful getting to hear your stories, getting to see the very real impact that and need for this legislation in Missouri, because it's clear that what we have isn't working, and that the Johnny referenced kind of that perpetual punishment, this unending punishment that people with criminal records, even well after they've finished their sentence, finished any kind of terms of probation, are still carrying that weight because society isn't able to look past that record. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the audience. Any questions for our panelists? Any thoughts that came up? Feel free to put it in the chat, or because we're all friends here, we can just go ahead and take yourself off mute if you'd like to share as well.
Yes, I do have a question. Hi, everybody. My name is Shanae Price. How y'all doing? The question I have is, I went to the penitentiary in 1988 for a drug charge. And when I got out, I was told the same things you guys were told, that you are a productive member, you get your voting rights back, you get a job, you get an education. Turns out, until that was able to happen, that didn't happen. For one, I got on disability. I was sick. I was not able to apply for food stamps because my felony was after 1996. They told me I was barred for life. Okay, I started going to college. Even though I'm disabled, I'm a person with a disability. I have reached the point of where I'm ending my finalization at Capella University for my capstone and a doctor for business administration. Okay, I'm 49 years old, getting ready to be 50. And I can't, for the life of me, I can't get an apartment still because of my record. I'm barred from the food stamp program. I'm on a fixed income. And you know, I have no help. But I chose to not give up. I've written the legislature. I've done a lot of things to try to get that change for people that are in situations like myself, who have come out here and tried to be productive members of society, but still get the doors slammed in their face. How can you think better about yourself? How can you improve your self-esteem or your outlook when you have this always on your back? And you're paying for it time and time and time again, even though you've served your sentence, you've paid your debt to society. What are you to do?
Go ahead, Patty.
I personally think you're absolutely right. There are barriers, but sharing those barriers on platforms where the people who can make change is important, and that's our legislators. Sharing how these barriers are prohibiting you to be a productive member of society is important. So you have to start out with your local legislators to share your story and the impact of what these barriers are doing to you as a person. Aligning yourself with Empower Missouri. That's another amazing organization. So the more of us coming together allows for a larger impact to take place and to share our stories. I mean, again, sharing those data statistics with people that Gwen shared earlier on this town hall meeting is really important because people don't realize that I call it an epidemic, that this is a reoccurring pattern that happens to so many people, and it shouldn't be allowed. So try to identify yourself with organizations that are doing remarkable things in the reentry space. And again, I would just encourage you to speak with legislators who are pro reentry.
I thank you for that. And just like Mr. Johnny said, I listened to his story and it was very heartfelt. I deal with the same issues time and time again. I've been out of prison since 1999. Since then, I've gotten my associates, my bachelor's, my master's, and I'm completing my doctorate. Now, if that isn't a turnaround for a Black African American female with a drug problem, a history of drug abuse and drug sales, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and check out P2P2, Shawnee, because you could get more resources and you can be part of a larger network if you're interested in education.
Yes, I took the information down and I'm going to email Nancy.
Yes, Nancy.
I'm going to do the email, and I'm going to talk to them and let them know it's a struggle out here just being free. But an example, you're free on paper, but you're not free when you come out into society and you have these barriers.
Shawnee, I'm sorry.
I know you, Patty.
Okay.
Hi, Patty.
What's really important here is that we quit trying to break through brick walls that are set up to keep us out. We have to create our own spaces. And that's why it's so important to have a network of formerly incarcerated people who have maybe walked where you've walked, did what you did, and can lead you through a doorway where you can get yourself through your own experience some help. And I know, you went through, you got all the degrees and everything, and you said that you're just disabled, but a disability does not have to keep you stuck. I suggest, hey, where are you at? Are you in St. Louis?
Yes, I'll be back tomorrow. Currently, I'm in Aurora taking care of my mother. She just had surgery. But thanks to God that I'm able to do these things.
I invite you to get involved with all of us on the St. Louis chapter. Even if you're living out of St. Louis,
I will be back.
virtually.
I will be back tomorrow, and
Okay.
I will do that. I'm currently a part of Love in Action. I speak with Imani Robertson with the Love in Action Community Support. It's a nonprofit agency, and she has uplifted me so to say that there is hope. Yes. I'm some water. Okay. To say that there is hope for people like us. That's my 3-year-old grandson that's traveling with me. I'm sorry. But yes, to say that there is hope for people like us, that we shouldn't give up, because I'm not going to give up, because it's always a loophole somewhere, somehow, where we can better ourselves, even though these barriers are set up for our failure.
I wouldn't call it a loophole. I would call it something that we had to create, because there's no path for us. We have to make our own path in the society that we live in. Yeah, we have to work with others who aren't formally incarcerated to get things done. But we also have to network with one another. We have to keep each other hopeful and moving through, whatever we have, our personal stories are. But thank you for sharing that. I'm so sorry you had to go through all this. Believe me, I feel your pain. I do.
Well, I thank you all for being able to listen. So this feels good to me, just to have someone to tell, look at what's going on, and to see that someone else is going through the same thing. I've joined many support groups, and this is one I know I'm going to be a part of. I have so many things, so many ideas, so many things to better people like me. And I think it's good that we can share this information with each other and come together and try to make some changes.
Yeah, and I guess I'm gonna say, like, my friends all got felony convictions. Some of my friends are murderers, drug dealers. They on lifetime parole. They still my people. We still talk every day. So I'm gonna say this. America has made it a hopeless situation, right? So people can say whatever they want to say, but in the end, like they put you in a hopeless situation, then expect you to thrive in it all the time, knowing that more than likely you're gonna end up back in prison, especially if you're black. Though for me, one of those things to where, like, I went to a meeting and told them I was Moses, man, let my people know. And so I'm gonna fight for you every day. And if you ever got a problem, you can always call me, because whether it's housing, and if you got a conviction, we can get some of our team to look at it, see if it's expungable under 610-140. Like there's all kind of things that we could do, or we could go kick in, not literally kick in the toes, but
I,
you know what I
I,
mean? We could we could rattle some people and get some things done. Because I'm not a guy who plays around. I think that's why people know me. Like, I'm not playing with you. Like, y'all sent me to prison when I was 18 years old, and you tormented me for 20 years. So I have no sympathy for none of them people at all. Just like they didn't have no sympathy for me. And so whatever you need, do let me know. I will drive to
thank
say,
you.
we can do something.
Yes, I love to have. Right now, I'm coming out of a closet. I'm in recovery also, and
That's what's
having
up.
new people, new friends, a new base of just interest to get involved in is something important to me. I'm involved with all types of support groups on Facebook. We have weekly meetings. We do readings of different books. And all the while, I'm a grandmother of 6, a mother of 2 grown children, and I'm working on all of this. So I thank you for that.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm gonna tell you another thing. So I traveled to Jefferson City for 6 years to
Mhm,
work to end the lifetime ban for people with felony convictions with food
mhm,
stamps.
mhm.
And we passed that legislation. And what I keep hearing from the community though is that
They
the
still saying,
legislation is not working the way
mhm,
that we passed it. And
yes,
that situation is that we need to hear about so we can go and fix that. If
mhm,
they're not honoring or they're not doing what it is that we we want them to do, then we need to know so we can organize
yes,
grassroots and go back up there and say, hey,
yes,
you're not honoring your agreement.
yeah. Because the conviction I got was in 1998. Okay, they said if it's after 96, you are banned for life.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And
And it's not
they
supposed to be
amended
that.
it. They amended it to
Hmm.
only possessions. Okay, I
Yeah,
have trafficking.
yeah. So talk to me offline, off of this, and I
Sure.
can see what's going on. I can see how I can help you, and then we can look at your what's going on with your record and see
Mhm.
if it's expungible or not. I don't know.
Okay.
Sydney's one of our lawyers. She's on here.
Okay.
But let's. Oh, there she is. I can see her hand. Uh,
Okay.
My camera fell. Sorry.
okay.
Oops.
And
Hi.
so,
Uh-huh.
uh, yeah,
Hi,
talk to me
Sydney.
and Sydney, and
Mhm.
so we can see
Yeah, we
what's
only
going
have
on.
9 more minutes on this call. We're gonna
Yeah.
have to move forward.
Okay.
Sydney, you had
Well,
something you wanted to say?
Was that to me? Sorry.
hi.
Um,
Yeah, I think it was to you, Sydney.
oh, okay. Well, I can give you our phone number if you want to call us tomorrow. And we can that's in the chat. And then
Sure.
our website that has an intake application is
Okay.
also now in the chat.
All right. Thank you so much. And Mr. Waller, I sent you my private phone number.
We have a one pager of expungement resources with info about UMKC and then also Arch City Defenders here in St. Louis and some Springfield clinics. I will send that out as a PDF to everybody that is on the call and everybody that was signed up.
Thank you.
All right, we've got time for a couple more audience questions. If anyone would like to put a question in the chat or come off mute.
If you don't have a question, maybe you have a comment. I don't know.
I'm curious if anyone has more to say just kind of about the overlap between the work for Clean Slate and low wage worker organizing. I know, Fran, that's something that you're very involved in, and I know that criminal record clearance has a lot to do with that. And I think that this is just a good opportunity to highlight that overlap.
I could talk for days. I don't know. But there's a direct correlation between wages that especially the low wage jobs. 'Cause I think this was pointed out, but by a few people. Again, I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and I came here on parole. Yeah, the ONE, and so I remember they were like, "Yeah, Johnny, you could be a dishwasher." What? You could be a dishwasher and you could go wash dishes. And I was like, that's it. Like that's all I'm good for. And so if you examine the wages, especially people who have a felony conviction, um, we are stuck in and again, I'm gonna use this perpetual state of poverty, right? So we're perpetually punished and then we're stuck in a perpetual state of poverty. And the likelihood that we make it out of that situation is next to none, next to none. And so we're stuck there. And people put these high expectations on us to again successfully reintegrate back into society when it's not possible. And then people tell you should really have hope, but you really realize you're in a hopeless situation. Like and they keep saying this to you, and and it makes you confused. You're like, wait, what? What up? I worked at Conoco gas station at 1335 East Bannister Road for $8.35. And I'm gonna tell you something. The only reason I got that job is because the person who gave me a liquor license, my little liquor card, was like, I had to go. They sell liquor, and in Missouri, as you know, as a convicted felon, you're not supposed to have that liquor card. And so I went down there, and I literally had to, tell my story and beg this lady to give me that liquor card so I could get this $8 job, not $10, not $18, $8 job. And she could have lost her job. And she said, hey, I'm gonna give it to you. Please don't do anything stupid because I could get fired. And I said, no, I just want to work. Like, I want to work like everybody else. And I worked at that gas, and I was happy to get that. I think Patty said that too. Like, I was happy to get that job. Like, I went to work, rain, sleet, or snow, like the post office. I just wanted to get a job. I'm tired of arguing with somebody about why I can't do whatever. I can't contribute to the bills. I don't want to hear that. I'm trying. And so that $8 job, they gave me a little bit of hope. But we're stuck in these particular situations. Again, that whole going to school and getting all this. I never went to high school. I only made it to the 7th grade. I got my GED while I was incarcerated, while I was in prison. Like I didn't never go to school. And so my prospects were, and so we are stuck in these dead end, minimum wage, low jobs. And I'll tell you something, I worked at Just for Feet while I was on parole. And the guy, my manager, sat some money out and he left it there. And he walked out. And he came back in and said, "Oh man, I thought you was gonna take it." That's how I got treated at one of my first jobs when I left the gas station. So we're stuck in these low wage, high stress jobs, and people take advantage of us because they know we're in a particular situation. And it's not right. And that's why it takes every one of us to fight, not sit down, not look the other way, but it takes every one of us to fight for this. Y'all my people, I love y'all. I'm gonna fight with y'all just as hard as they fight against us. Okay, I'm done.
That is a wonderful note to end it on, Johnny, and I want to echo Shani said in the chat that you're feeling inspired. I'm also feeling very inspired right now. So big shout out to our panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with us this evening and really highlighting the importance and timeliness of the Clean Slate campaign in Missouri. I will be following up with those expungement resources and as well as some other kind of information about how to get connected to the Clean Slate campaign, how to get connected to the Community Justice Coalition. So if this is your first time getting connected with the campaign, please stay in contact. I put my email in the chat and would love to talk further. So again, thank you, everybody. It's been a wonderful evening getting to hear from our panelists, and I hope that everybody has a great night. Thanks so much. Take care.
You too, Gwen. Bye-bye, everybody.